Marcus Chen had been standing guard at the Terran Memorial for 8 years, 3 months and 17 days. Not that anyone was counting except him. The other species in the Galactic Council thought humans were strange for posting guards at their war memorials, especially memorials located on remote asteroids in the middle of nowhere. They didn't understand that some things were sacred to humans, no matter how inconvenient the location. The Terran Memorial sat carved into Asteroid 7 Gamma, a floating rock in the neutral zone between human space and the contested territories. It housed the remains of 2 million human soldiers who died during the First Contact War, when humanity first encountered the Galactic Council. The war had lasted 3 brutal years and ended with a treaty that most humans felt was unfair. But it gave humanity a small seat at the galactic table, and sometimes that had to be enough. Marcus wore the traditional blue and silver uniform of the Tomb Guard, a rifle across his back and a plasma sidearm at his hip. His post was a small observation deck that looked out over the memorial's central chamber, where an eternal flame burned in zero gravity. The flame was a clever piece of human engineering that the other species still couldn't figure out how to replicate. It burned without fuel, fed only by the quantum field generators buried deep in the asteroid's core. The other guards called him Deadshot Chen because of his reputation with a rifle. Before joining the Tomb Guard, Marcus had served in the Outer Colony Defense Force, where he'd earned 17 medals for marksmanship. His longest confirmed kill was 2.3 kilometers in Earth gravity, made with iron sights during the Proxima Rebellion. The shot had saved a refugee transport and earned him a place in the military records. But those days were behind him now. The Tomb Guard was supposed to be a peaceful assignment. They were ceremonial soldiers, there to honor the dead and show respect to visitors from other species. In 8 years, the most exciting thing that had happened was when a drunk Zephyrian tourist tried to touch the eternal flame. Marcus had politely but firmly escorted the alien away, and that was that. The asteroid was supposed to be neutral territory, protected by the same treaties that ended the First Contact War. No weapons above personal defense level were allowed within 100,000 kilometers. No military ships could approach without permission from all parties. It was a place of peace, or at least that's what the politicians claimed. Marcus knew better. He'd read the classified reports that came through the Tomb Guard communications array. Tensions were rising throughout the galaxy. The hegemony, a militant alliance of species that believed in genetic purity, was gaining power. They saw humans as an infection, a primitive species that had been allowed into galactic society too early. Recent attacks on human colonies in the outer systems had the hallmarks of hegemony tactics, even though they always denied involvement. The observation deck where Marcus stood was perfectly positioned. From here, he could see the entire memorial chamber, the main entrance tunnel, and most importantly, the space around the asteroid through the reinforced, transparent aluminum windows. The architects had designed it this way on purpose. The Tomb Guard wasn't just there for ceremony. They were the last line of defense if anyone ever tried to desecrate this sacred place. Marcus checked his rifle for the 1,000th time that week. It was a custom-built weapon, modified far beyond standard military specifications. The barrel was made from a rare earth alloy that could handle extreme temperatures without warping. The scope was military-grade, with built-in range-finding and atmospheric compensation. The rifle could fire standard plasma bolts for normal combat, but it also had a special mode that Marcus hoped he'd never have to use. Hidden in the rifle's stock was a single experimental projectile, developed by human military scientists in secret. They called it a quantum penetrator, and according to the technical specifications, it could punch through almost any known material by temporarily shifting the target's molecular structure. The projectile was incredibly expensive to make and impossible to replace. Each Tomb Guard was issued exactly one, with orders to use it only in the most desperate circumstances. The memorial around Marcus held stories of sacrifice that most of the galaxy preferred to forget. Humans had fought with everything they had during the First Contact War, using tactics that other species called insane or impossible. Where other species had advanced technology, humans had determination and creativity. Where others had overwhelming numbers, humans had the willingness to sacrifice everything for their species' survival. The walls of the memorial were covered with holographic displays showing the faces of the fallen, farmers who became soldiers overnight, scientists who turned their research into weapons, Children who grew up too fast in the hell of interstellar war. They'd fought against impossible odds and somehow forced the galaxy to accept humanity as equals, at least on paper. Marcus touched the memorial wall gently, feeling the cool surface under his fingertips. The quantum field generators created a slight vibration that ran through the entire asteroid, like a slow heartbeat. Sometimes he imagined it was the pulse of all those who had died here, still fighting to protect their species even in death. The communication array in his helmet crackled with routine traffic from Earth Command. Supply ships would arrive next week. A diplomatic mission from the Centauri colonies wanted to visit the memorial next month. The Galactic Council was debating new trade regulations that would probably hurt human interests again. Normal stuff, the kind of political noise that Marcus had learned to tune out over the years. But something felt different today. Maybe it was the way the eternal flame seemed to flicker more than usual, or the strange static on the long-range sensors. Marcus had developed an instinct for trouble during his years in the Outer Colony Defense Force, and that instinct was telling him to pay attention. He checked his rifle one more time and settled into position. Outside the asteroid, space looked peaceful and empty, but Marcus Chen, last defender of the Terran Memorial, had learned never to trust appearances. In his experience, the galaxy's most dangerous moments often looked exactly like its most peaceful ones. The first sign of trouble was a ripple in space itself, barely visible against the starfield beyond the asteroid. Marcus noticed it only because he'd been staring at the same patch of empty space for the last hour, letting his mind wander while his eyes stayed alert. The ripple lasted maybe 3 seconds, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, except this was the cold vacuum of space. His training kicked in immediately. Marcus activated the memorial's long-range sensors and began scanning the area where he'd seen the disturbance. At first, the readings showed nothing unusual. Then slowly, ghost images began appearing on his display. Ships, but not like any ships in the official galactic databases. These were sleek, predatory things that seemed to bend light around themselves. "Command, this is Tomb Guard Station 7 Gamma." Marcus spoke into his helmet comm. "I'm picking up unidentified contacts approaching the memorial. Request immediate verification of their authorization to enter neutral space." The response came back 15 minutes later, which meant the message had to travel all the way to Earth Command and back. 7 Gamma. No scheduled visits to your location. All diplomatic missions are accounted for. Please confirm your sensor readings. By then, Marcus could see them with his naked eyes. 12 ships, each about the size of a human destroyer but built with curves and angles that hurt to look at directly. They moved in perfect formation, approaching the asteroid slowly and deliberately. These weren't raiders or pirates. This was a military operation. The ship stopped just outside the neutral zone's boundaries, hovering in space like vultures waiting for something to die. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Marcus reported their presence to Earth Command and requested backup, but the nearest human fleet was 3 days away. The Galactic Council peacekeepers were closer, but they'd need time to verify the situation and decide whether to respond. Then the aliens sent a message. It came through on all frequencies simultaneously, overriding every communication system on the asteroid. The voice that spoke was cold and mechanical, translated by universal language protocols but still carrying an undertone of absolute contempt. "Humans of the false memorial," the voice said, "you have violated galactic law by placing a military installation in neutral space. This monument to your primitive violence is an insult to all civilized species. You have 1 hour to evacuate, after which we will cleanse this space of your contamination." Marcus felt his blood run cold. These weren't Council peacekeepers or even normal hegemony forces. The language, the ships, the casual way they'd violated neutral space. This had to be the Purity Fleet, the hegemony's elite military wing. They were the ones who'd been hitting human colonies in the outer systems, always leaving just enough evidence to make it clear they were responsible while maintaining plausible deniability. "Command, this is 7 Gamma. Marcus transmitted immediately. "The contacts have identified themselves as hostile. They're demanding evacuation and threatening to destroy the memorial. I need authorization for defensive action." This time the response came faster. Someone at Earth Command was taking this seriously. 7 Gamma, you are authorized to defend the memorial by any means necessary. Reinforcements are en route but will not arrive for 72 hours minimum. Hold position and protect the site. Marcus laughed grimly. Protect the site. One man with a rifle against 12 military starships. The brass either had incredible faith in his abilities or they were writing him off as an acceptable loss. Probably both. He began running through his options. The asteroid had minimal defensive systems, just enough to deal with small debris or the occasional meteorite. The Tomb Guard stations were equipped with personal weapons and emergency supplies, but nothing that could threaten a starship. The memorial itself was carved deep into the asteroid's core, protected by layers of rock and metal. But those ships could probably crack the asteroid like an egg if they wanted to. The alien ships began moving closer, still maintaining their formation, but clearly preparing for action. Marcus could see weapon ports opening along their hulls, revealing energy projectors that glowed with an ominous blue light. These weren't warning shots they were preparing. These were ship killers, weapons designed to punch through military armor. As the ships approached, Marcus got a better look at their design. The hulls were covered in organic-looking curves and ridges that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. The hegemony had always claimed their technology was superior to human engineering, but this looked like something beyond even their usual capabilities. This looked like the rumored bioships that intelligence reports said the Purity Fleet was developing. The Memorial's automated systems began activating emergency protocols. Blast shutters sealed the main entrances. The Eternal Flames chamber locked down behind multiple layers of protective barriers. Emergency transmitters began broadcasting distress signals to every human ship and station within 50 light years. Not that any of them could arrive in time to help. Marcus made his way to the primary observation post, the highest point on the asteroid with the best view of the surrounding space. From here he could see everything that mattered. The alien ships now only a few thousand kilometers away. The memorial chambers below where 2 million human heroes lay at rest. The vast emptiness of space beyond, where help would eventually come but not nearly soon enough. He checked his rifle again, more out of habit than hope. Even the experimental quantum penetrator would be useless against a starship's shields and armor. But orders were orders, and Marcus Chen had never abandoned his post in 8 years of service. He wasn't about to start now. The alien voice returned, more demanding than before. Humans, your time grows short. We detect only one life sign on the asteroid. Surrender yourself for processing, and we will make your death quick. Continue to resist, and we will ensure your suffering matches your species' crimes against genetic purity. Marcus keyed his comm system to respond on all frequencies, making sure his words would be recorded by every sensor array within 100 light years. This is Tomb Guard Marcus Chen, defender of the Terran Memorial. This is neutral space under Galactic Treaty, and these remains are under the protection of the Galactic Council. You have no authority here. The alien response was immediate and filled with what could only be described as amusement. Council authority means nothing to those who seek to purify the galaxy. Your species is a cancer, human. We are the cure. The 12 ships began their final approach, weapons charging and targeting systems locking onto the asteroid. Marcus took position at his observation post, rifle ready, and prepared to make humanity's last stand at the Tomb of Heroes. The first energy blast struck the asteroid's outer surface like the anger of gods. Marcus felt the entire structure shudder beneath his feet as alien weapons carved through rock and metal that had withstood meteor impacts for decades. The memorial's emergency lighting flickered to life, bathing everything in a red glow that reminded him uncomfortably of blood. But the aliens weren't trying to destroy the asteroid yet. These were precision strikes, targeted at the memorial's communication arrays and defensive systems. They wanted Marcus isolated and helpless before they finished the job. The methodical way they worked told him these weren't random raiders. This was a professional military operation, planned and executed with surgical precision. Marcus ducked as another blast shook the observation post. Through the reinforced windows he could see chunks of asteroids spinning away into space, carrying with them pieces of the memorial's outer structures. The aliens were taking their time, savoring their work. They probably thought they were demonstrating the futility of human resistance to any observers in nearby systems. His comm system crackled with static, then cleared just enough for him to hear a transmission from Earth Command. 7 Gamma, Marcus. Can you hear us? The entire galactic net is watching this. Every species in the Council has ships monitoring your position. Whatever you do, make it count. The transmission cut out as another alien blast took out the last of the communication relays. Now Marcus was truly alone, cut off from any backup or guidance. But knowing that the galaxy was watching changed everything. This wasn't just about defending a memorial anymore. This was about showing every species in the Council what humans were really made of. Marcus activated the memorial's internal recording systems, making sure everything that happened would be preserved in the quantum storage cores buried deep in the asteroid's heart. Even if he died here, the galaxy would know exactly how a human tomb guard faced impossible odds. The alien ships had formed a perfect circle around the asteroid, each one positioned to cover a different arc of fire. They were being careful not to damage each other, while they systematically destroyed the memorial's defenses. Professional, efficient, and completely confident in their superiority. That confidence might be their weakness. Marcus began moving through the memorial's internal passages, using maintenance tunnels and service corridors that wouldn't show up on the alien scans. The memorial had been designed by military engineers who understood that even ceremonial installations might need to withstand attack. Hidden throughout the structure were emergency supplies, backup weapon caches, and defensive positions that most visitors never knew existed. In Storage Bay 7, Marcus found what he was looking for. The memorial kept a supply of military-grade equipment for special ceremonies and honor guards. Most of it was parade ground stuff, but buried in the back were 3 cases of combat gear from the First Contact War. Ancient by galactic standards, but humans had a talent for making old technology work in new ways. The first case contained sensor equipment that the aliens probably couldn't detect. Human stealth technology worked differently than other species' systems. Instead of trying to hide completely, it created false readings and sensor ghosts that confused enemy targeting systems. Marcus strapped the portable generator to his back and activated it, immediately feeling the subtle hum that meant he was now mostly invisible to standard alien sensors. The second case held something more interesting: explosive charges designed for space combat, each one small enough to carry but powerful enough to damage a ship's hull. The charges were old, but their quantum cores were still active. Marcus took 6 of them, knowing he'd probably only get one chance to use them effectively. The third case made him smile. Inside were 3 dozen smart ammunition rounds for his rifle, each one capable of adjusting its trajectory in flight and seeking specific targets. They'd been experimental during the war, but the Tomb Guard had kept a few for emergencies. Marcus loaded them into his rifle's extended magazine, feeling the weapon's targeting system sync with the smart round's guidance systems. Now he had tools. The question was how to use them against 12 starships. Marcus made his way to the memorial's highest external platform, a ceremonial viewing area that jutted out from the asteroid's surface like a stone balcony. From here he could see all 12 alien ships, and more importantly, they could see him. The platform was designed to be visible from space, so visiting dignitaries could observe ceremonies from their ships. The alien ships noticed him immediately. Weapon turrets swiveled in his direction, and he could almost feel their targeting systems locking onto his position. For a moment, nothing happened. Then one of the ships transmitted on a local frequency. "Human soldier, you have shown courage by remaining at your post. Surrender now, and we will grant you a warrior's death." Marcus keyed his own comm system to respond. "I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm a tomb guard, and I don't surrender." The alien's response carried a note of genuine curiosity. "You defend dead flesh and empty symbols. There is no logic in your actions. What do you hope to accomplish?" "I hope to remind you why humans are in the Galactic Council," Marcus replied, "and why we're going to stay there." The aliens opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space where Marcus had been standing, but he was already moving. The stealth generator made him difficult to target, and his knowledge of the asteroid's layout gave him advantages the aliens couldn't counter. He rolled behind a memorial statue, feeling the heat from energy blasts that missed him by centimeters. From his new position, Marcus could see one of the alien ships moving closer, apparently trying to get a better angle for its weapons. The ship was beautiful in an alien way, its bioorganic hull flowing like liquid metal. But beauty wouldn't save it from what Marcus had planned. He attached one of the explosive charges to a piece of ceremonial metalwork, then used his rifle to shoot it into space. The smart round carried the charge along a trajectory that looked random, but was actually precisely calculated. The charge drifted silently through vacuum until it contacted the alien ship's hull, where its magnetic clamps activated. The explosion that followed was small by naval standards, barely enough to damage a ship's armor. But it achieved something more important. It proved that a single human with primitive weapons could hurt them. The alien formation changed immediately, ships pulling back to longer range and increasing their defensive scanning. They'd been caught off guard, and Marcus could tell they didn't like the feeling. "Impossible," came the transmission from the alien commander. "Your weapons cannot reach us at this distance." Marcus smiled as he prepared his next shot. "You really don't know much about humans, do you?" Marcus retreated deeper into the asteroid as the alien bombardment intensified. They were no longer being careful about preservation. Energy beams carved through the memorial's outer structures, turning stone monuments into vapor and metal into molten slag. The aliens had decided that if they couldn't capture him easily, they'd simply eliminate him along with everything he was trying to protect. But their increased aggression gave Marcus information he needed. The way their ships moved, the timing of their weapon cycles, the coordination between vessels. All of it told him things about their capabilities and limitations. Human military doctrine had always emphasized that every enemy action revealed weakness to those who knew how to look. In Emergency Bunker 3, built into the asteroid's core, Marcus accessed the Memorial's tactical analysis computer. It was old technology by galactic standards, but it had been designed by humans who understood warfare in ways most species never would. The computer began processing everything Marcus had observed about the alien ships, building a tactical picture that grew more detailed with each passing minute. The results were both encouraging and terrifying. The alien ships were incredibly advanced, their bioorganic hulls capable of self-repair and their weapons more powerful than anything in the standard galactic arsenal. But they were also predictable. Their formation patterns followed mathematical principles that prioritized efficiency over adaptability. They thought like machines, not like humans. More importantly, the computer had identified their command ship. It was larger than the others, positioned at the formation's center, and all tactical communication seemed to originate from its position. If Marcus could take out the command ship, the others might lose coordination long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The problem was distance. The command ship was maintaining position almost 50,000 kilometers from the asteroid, well beyond the range of any personal weapon. Even the experimental quantum penetrator had a theoretical maximum range of only 10,000 kilometers, and that assumed perfect conditions and no interference. Marcus pulled up the Memorial's construction blueprints on the computer, looking for something that might give him an advantage. The asteroid had been extensively modified during construction, with deep shafts drilled for the quantum field generators that powered the eternal flame. Some of those shafts extended almost to the asteroid's core, creating long, straight passages through solid rock. An idea began forming in Marcus's mind. It was insane, impossible, and would probably kill him even if it worked. But it was the kind of plan that human military instructors called creative problem solving, and that other species called evolutionary suicide. The longest shaft, Tunnel 7 Alpha, extended from the Memorial's central chamber straight down to the quantum generator complex 4 kilometers below. The tunnel was perfectly straight, lined with the same transparent aluminum that was used in Starship viewports. It had been designed as both a maintenance access and a symbolic connection between the Memorial above and the power source that kept the eternal flame burning. Marcus could use it as the barrel of the largest rifle in human history. The plan required perfect timing, precise calculation, and a level of marksmanship that exceeded anything he'd ever attempted. But the more Marcus thought about it, the more possible it seemed. The asteroid was spinning slowly, which would affect his trajectory. The alien ships were moving in predictable patterns which he could calculate. The quantum penetrator was designed to phase through matter, which meant it might be able to travel the entire length of the tunnel without losing energy. Marcus began running calculations on the tactical computer, factoring in everything from gravitational influences to the effects of solar wind on his projectile's path. The math was complex, requiring him to predict where the command ship would be when his shot reached its position, accounting for the time it would take the projectile to travel 50,000 kilometers. Meanwhile, the alien bombardment continued above. Marcus could feel the asteroid shuddering with each impact, and occasionally pieces of debris would rain down through the access shafts. The memorial was dying around him, but its death was giving him the information he needed to plan his impossible shot. The tactical computer finished its analysis and presented Marcus with a targeting solution. He had a window of exactly 7 minutes and 32 seconds when the asteroid's rotation, the alien ship's position, and the gravitational influences would align perfectly. One shot, at exactly the right moment with exactly the right trajectory. Marcus made his way to the quantum generator chamber, the deepest point in the asteroid and the bottom of Tunnel 7 Alpha. The chamber was a cathedral of human engineering, filled with humming machinery that converted matter into energy, and energy into the quantum field that powered the eternal flame. It was here that the memorial's heart beat, and it was here that Marcus would take his stand. The tunnel stretched above him like a perfectly straight well, its walls gleaming with reflected light from the generators. At the top, 4 kilometers away, he could see the faint glow of the eternal flame. The tunnel was so long that the other end looked like a distant star. Marcus positioned himself carefully, using the chamber's maintenance platforms to create a stable shooting position. His rifle scope could adjust for the extreme distance, and its targeting computer could communicate with the tactical analysis system to provide real-time updates on the alien ship's positions. He loaded the quantum penetrator into his rifle's special chamber, feeling the weapon systems react to the exotic ammunition. According to the technical specifications, the penetrator would phase shift its target's molecular structure for exactly 0.03 seconds, allowing the projectile to pass through any known material. The effect was temporary, but at the speeds involved, temporary was enough. 3 minutes to the firing window. Marcus settled into position, controlling his breathing and heart rate the way he'd been trained during his military service. The rifle felt solid and familiar in his hands, an extension of his will made manifest in metal and energy. Above him, the alien bombardment reached a crescendo. The entire asteroid rang like a bell as massive explosions shook its structure. Warning lights flashed throughout the generator chamber as automatic systems fought to maintain power and structural integrity. The memorial was breaking apart around him, but its core remained strong. 1 minute to firing window. Marcus could see the command ship through his scope, a distant speck of reflected starlight that his targeting computer identified with a soft green glow. The ship was massive, probably carrying thousands of alien crew, members who thought they were witnessing the destruction of a primitive human outpost. They were about to learn why humans had earned their place in the galactic community. 30 seconds. Marcus's world narrowed to the scope's view, the feel of the rifle in his hands and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Everything else, the explosions above, the failing memorial, the impossible odds, faded into background noise. 10 seconds. The targeting computer showed perfect alignment. The asteroid's rotation had brought the tunnel into exactly the right position. The command ship was precisely where the calculations said it would be. 5 seconds. Marcus took a deep breath, held it, and felt his heart slow to its natural rhythm between beats. Time to remind the galaxy what impossible meant to a human. Marcus squeezed the trigger. The quantum penetrator left the rifle's barrel at a significant fraction of light speed, its exotic matter core converting the weapon's stored energy into pure kinetic force. The projectile raced up through Tunnel 7 Alpha, its quantum field interacting with the tunnel, wall's molecular structure, and allowing it to pass through 4 kilometers of solid matter as if it were empty space. The shot was perfect. Everything Marcus had calculated, every variable he'd accounted for, every impossible factor that had to align, it all came together in a single moment of absolute precision. The projectile emerged from the memorial's surface exactly as the asteroid's rotation brought the tunnel into alignment with the alien command ship's position. The quantum penetrator crossed 50,000 kilometers of empty space in less than 2 seconds, guided by targeting systems that had been programmed with a level of accuracy that other species called mathematically absurd. The alien command ship never saw it coming. From the outside, the impact looked almost gentle, a tiny flash of light against the ship's bioorganic hull, barely visible against the backdrop of stars. But inside the ship, reality underwent a fundamental change. The quantum penetrator's field effect triggered a cascade reaction through the vessel's molecular structure, causing matter to briefly exist in multiple states simultaneously. For exactly 0.003 seconds, Every atom in the command ship's central core existed as both solid matter and quantum possibility. The ship's biological systems, which had evolved over millions of years to maintain precise chemical balances, couldn't adapt to the sudden shift in physical laws. Neural networks that had functioned for centuries simply stopped working. Organs that had never known failure began to shut down. The command ship's death was as alien as its life had been. Instead of exploding like a human vessel might, it began to collapse inward, its bioorganic hull losing coherence as the quantum field disrupted the electromagnetic forces holding its molecular structure together. The ship folded in on itself like a living thing dying, which in many ways it was. Marcus watched through his scope as the impossible happened. The most advanced ship in the alien fleet, protected by technology that human scientists could barely understand, destroyed by a single shot from a weapon that most galactic military experts would have dismissed as primitive. The effect on the rest of the alien fleet was immediate and dramatic. Without their command ship's coordination, the remaining 11 vessels lost their perfect formation. Ships that had moved with mechanical precision began to drift, their crews apparently struggling to understand what had just happened. Several vessels began emergency maneuvers, pulling back from the asteroid as if Marcus might somehow shoot them down too. But Marcus only had one quantum penetrator, and now it was gone. The experimental round had disintegrated during impact, its exotic matter core returning to whatever quantum realm it had originally come from. He was back to conventional weapons against 11 starships, which meant he was back to being hopelessly outgunned. Except that something fundamental had changed. The aliens were no longer behaving like confident predators. They were acting like prey animals who had just discovered they weren't at the top of the food chain after all. Marcus activated his comm system, broadcasting on all frequencies. He knew the message would be recorded by every sensor array within light years, transmitted to every government and military organization in the galaxy. This was his chance to speak not just to the aliens attacking him, but to every species that had ever wondered what humans were really capable of. "This is Tomb Guard Marcus Chen, defender of the Terran Memorial," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. "I have just demonstrated that human weapons can reach any target, at any range under any circumstances. Your command ship is destroyed, your formation is broken. Your crews are probably wondering if they're going to be next." The response came from one of the remaining ships, its transmission filled with what sounded like panic. "Impossible. Human weapons cannot achieve such accuracy. You must have used technology from another species." Marcus laughed and made sure the sound carried clearly over the comm channel. "That's the thing about humans. We don't need your permission to do the impossible. We've been doing it since we first looked up at the stars and decided to visit them." Above him, the memorial continued to shake under alien bombardment, but the attacks had become scattered and uncoordinated. Without their command ship, the alien fleet was reduced to 11 individual vessels acting on their own initiative. Some were pulling back to safe distances. Others were continuing to fire, but without the precision they'd shown before. A few seemed to be preparing to retreat entirely. Marcus began moving through the memorial's passages again, this time heading for the main ceremonial chamber where the eternal flame burned. If he was going to make his final stand, it would be there, among the monuments to human heroes who had faced their own impossible odds. As he climbed through the damaged tunnels, Marcus could hear the change in the alien communications, where before their transmissions had been cold and professional, now they carried undertones of uncertainty and fear. They were using terms like unknown technology and tactical withdrawal and reassessment of human capabilities. The quantum penetrator had done more than destroy a single ship. It had shattered the aliens' fundamental assumptions about human military capacity. They'd come here expecting to sweep aside a primitive species memorial guard. Instead, they'd lost their command vessel to a weapon that their science couldn't explain and their doctrine couldn't counter. Marcus reached the eternal flame chamber to find it battered but intact. The flame itself still burned in its zero-gravity containment field, fed by the quantum generators deep below. The chamber's walls were scarred by energy blasts, and several of the memorial plaques had been destroyed, but the heart of the memorial survived. He took position beside the flame, his rifle ready for whatever came next. Through the chamber's damaged ceiling, he could see the alien ships maneuvering in space above. They seemed to be regrouping, but their formation was loose and uncertain. Whatever they decided to do next, it wouldn't be with the confidence they'd shown when they first arrived. Marcus checked his weapon's ammunition counter. He had 37 conventional rounds left, plus the 5 remaining explosive charges. Not much against 11 starships, but he'd already proved that quantity wasn't everything. Sometimes all it took was the right shot at the right moment to change everything. The comm system crackled with a new transmission, this one coming from much farther away. 7 Gamma. This is Admiral Richardson aboard the UES Indomitable. We're receiving your distress signal and tracking the alien fleet. ETA to your position is 18 hours. Can you hold until then? Marcus keyed his reply, knowing it would be heard by human and alien forces alike. Admiral, the situation is under control. 1 enemy command ship destroyed. 11 remaining vessels in disarray. The Terran Memorial stands and the dead rest easy. The transmission ended, but Marcus could imagine the effect his words would have. By now, every major power in the galaxy would be analyzing the sensor records of his impossible shot. Human military scientists would want to understand how he'd done it. Allied species would be reassessing their relationships with humanity. Enemy species would be wondering what other surprises humans might have in store. Above him, the alien fleet began to withdraw. 11 ships that had arrived as conquerors were leaving as survivors, their crews carrying stories that would spread throughout the galaxy. Stories about a single human who had turned the vacuum of space into a weapon and made the impossible look routine. Marcus Chen, last defender of the Terran Memorial, settled back to wait for reinforcements. The eternal flame burned beside him, its light reflecting off the damaged walls like a promise that some things would never be extinguished. The news of Marcus Chen's impossible shot spread through the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communicators and diplomatic channels to every major civilization within 100 parsecs. Within 6 hours, emergency sessions were being called in the Galactic Council chambers. Military advisors were being dragged from their sleep across dozens of star systems, and intelligence agencies were frantically trying to understand how a single human had just changed the balance of galactic power. On the bridge of the hegemony dreadnought, Genetic Purity, Fleet Admiral Zexhai stared at the tactical recordings for the 15th time. The mathematics were undeniable, but they made no sense according to everything the hegemony knew about human capabilities. A projectile fired from a personal weapon had traveled 50,000 kilometers through space and somehow penetrated the bioorganic armor of their most advanced command ship. Analysis? The Admiral demanded from his science officer. The weapon appears to have used some form of quantum field manipulation, came the nervous reply. The projectile existed in multiple probability states simultaneously, allowing it to phase through matter at the molecular level. The technology required for such an effect should be beyond human understanding. Should be, the Admiral repeated grimly, but clearly it is not. The surviving ships of the Purity fleet had retreated to the edge of the neutral zone, where they waited for orders from Hegemony High Command. But no orders came. For the first time in decades, the Hegemony's military leadership was uncertain about how to proceed. They'd built their entire strategy around the assumption that humans were a primitive species with inferior technology. That assumption was now burning wreckage floating in space around asteroid 7 Gamma. Meanwhile, aboard the Centauri Alliance monitoring station Deepwatch, Director Sarah Kim was coordinating the largest intelligence-gathering operation in recent galactic history. Every human listening post, spy satellite, and diplomatic contact was being activated to track the reactions of other species to Marcus Chen's feat. The Carillion Empire is requesting immediate technical briefings on human weapons capabilities, reported her chief analyst. The Zephyrian Republic wants to know if we're willing to share our quantum manipulation technology in exchange for expanded trade agreements. And the Vegan Confederacy is asking whether our defensive pacts include protection against impossible human weapons. Director Kim smiled grimly. Tell them all the same thing. The shot fired today represents standard human military capabilities. Any request for technical specifications should be directed through normal diplomatic channels. It was a lie, of course. The quantum penetrator was experimental technology that even human scientists barely understood. But the galaxy didn't need to know that. Let them assume that every human soldier might be capable of what Marcus Chen had just accomplished. At the Galactic Council headquarters on Nexus Prime, Emergency sessions were being held in 12 different languages, as species representatives tried to understand the implications of what they'd witnessed. The Council's military advisors had run the numbers repeatedly, and the conclusions were troubling for those who preferred to see humans as junior partners in galactic civilization. If human personal weapons can defeat hegemony command ships at 50,000 kilometers, asked the Arcturian representative, what are the capabilities of their military vessels? Their planetary defense systems? Their fleet weapons? No one had good answers to those questions. Human military technology had always been dismissed as crude but effective. Now suddenly, crude was looking like camouflage for capabilities that no one had suspected. The political coordinator for human affairs, a career diplomat named Ambassador Chen, no relation to Marcus, found herself fielding calls from every major power in the galaxy. The questions were always the same, phrased differently but carrying the same underlying concern. What else can humans do that we don't know about? The Terran Memorial incident represents a single individual's exceptional skill, she told each caller. Tomb Guard Chen is a decorated marksman whose abilities are well within documented human parameters. Another lie, but a useful one. Let the galaxy wonder whether every human was potentially as dangerous as Marcus Chen. Let them recalculate their military assessments and diplomatic strategies. Let them remember that humanity had earned its place in the galactic community through force of arms, and that force had just been demonstrated to be far more effective than anyone had imagined. Back on Asteroid 7 Gamma, Marcus Chen sat in the damaged Eternal Flame Chamber and watched the galaxy react to his shot through the Memorial's communication array. The equipment had been partially repaired by automated systems, giving him access to a small fraction of the galactic communication network. What he saw there both amazed and worried him. Stock markets were fluctuating wildly as investors tried to price in new assessments of human military capabilities. Defense contractors from 12 species were reportedly scrambling to develop countermeasures to quantum phase weapons. Several minor conflicts that had been simmering for years had suddenly gone quiet as species reassessed whether they could afford to fight while humans might choose sides. The hegemony's propaganda networks, which had spent years claiming that humans were an inferior species destined for extinction, were notably silent. Their usual broadcasts of genetic superiority and purity doctrine had been replaced with technical difficulties messages that fooled no one. More interesting were the reactions from humanity's allies. The Centauri colonies were openly celebrating, with public demonstrations in support of the hero of the memorial. The Inner Worlds Defense Alliance was quietly mobilizing additional forces, apparently preparing to take advantage of humanity's suddenly enhanced reputation, and the Outer Rim territories, which had always been skeptical of human protection, were sending diplomatic messages expressing renewed interest in mutual defense pacts. Marcus's comm system chimed with an incoming message marked with the highest military priority codes. The transmission was from Earth Command, but the voice that spoke was unmistakably that of the Secretary General of the United Earth Federation. Tomb Guard Chen, the voice said, formal but warm. Your actions today have brought great honor to the human species and to the memory of those you guard. The entire Federation is in your debt. Marcus keyed his reply carefully. Mr. Secretary General, I was just doing my job, protecting the memorial and honoring the dead. Your job, as you call it, has just changed the course of galactic history, came the response. Every species in the Council is reassessing their relationship with humanity. Our enemies fear us more, our allies respect us more, and the undecided are suddenly very interested in which side we might choose in their conflicts. The Secretary General paused before continuing. I want you to know that offers are already coming in. Military consulting contracts worth billions of credits, research partnerships to study your quantum weapons technology, even marriage proposals from species hoping to form genetic alliances with humans who can perform impossible feats. Marcus almost laughed at that last part. Sir, I fired one experimental round that probably cost more than my annual salary. I'm not sure that qualifies me for genetic superiority. The galaxy doesn't know that, the Secretary General replied. And we're not going to tell them. Your shot today has given humanity advantages we couldn't have bought with 1,000 diplomatic missions. Every species that was considering challenging human interests is now wondering if they can afford the consequences. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the dancing eternal flame. 50,000 kilometers away, the wreckage of the alien command ship was drifting in space, a testament to what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept the impossible. But Marcus knew the real memorial wasn't the twisted metal floating in vacuum. It was what happened next, how the galaxy would remember this moment, and what it would mean for human survival among the stars. The eternal flame flickered slightly as the memorial's quantum generators adjusted their output. 2 million human heroes rested in the chambers around him, their sacrifice finally receiving the recognition it deserved. They'd fought against impossible odds to earn humanity a place in galactic civilization. Today, Marcus Chen had reminded the galaxy why that place was permanent. 6 months after the shot heard throughout the galaxy, Marcus Chen stood once again at his post in the rebuilt Terran Memorial. The asteroid looked much the same as it had before the attack, but everything else had changed. Where once he'd been the lone guardian of a forgotten outpost, he now commanded a full ceremonial guard of 12 soldiers and oversaw a constant stream of visitors from across the galaxy. The memorial had become a pilgrimage site for humans and a required stop for military academies from dozens of species. Young officers came to study the tactical positions Marcus had used, to walk through the tunnels where he'd planned his impossible shot, and to see the quantum generator chamber where he'd changed galactic history with a single round. The rebuilt observation deck now included a bronze plaque marking the exact spot where Marcus had made his stand. The inscription was simple. From this position, Tomb Guard Marcus Chen fired the shot that reminded the galaxy what impossible means to a human. The plaque was written in 17 different languages, including several from species that had never bothered to translate human monuments before. Marcus wore new decorations on his uniform now. The Stellar Cross for Extraordinary Heroism, the Galactic Service Medal, and the Memorial Guard's highest honor, the Eternal Flame Citation. More importantly, he wore the same expression he'd always had, calm, alert, and utterly committed to his duty. The political consequences of his action continued to ripple through galactic civilization. The hegemony had withdrawn from 3 contested systems, apparently unwilling to risk confrontation with humans whose individual soldiers could destroy their command ships. 2 species that had been neutral in human conflicts had signed mutual defense treaties, specifically requesting protection against advanced weapon systems. Even the Galactic Council had quietly upgraded humanity's representation, moving human delegates from advisory status to full voting membership. But perhaps the most significant change was in how humans saw themselves. For decades, humanity had accepted a role as the galaxy's junior partner, grateful for any recognition and careful not to challenge more established species. Marcus's shot had reminded every human that their species had earned its place through courage and capability, not through the charity of others. The tourists who came to the memorial reflected this change. Human visitors no longer walked with the apologetic posture of a species trying to prove it belonged. They carried themselves with quiet confidence, the bearing of people who knew their ancestors had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. The galaxy was starting to understand what humans had always known, that impossibility was just another word for a challenge they hadn't solved yet. Marcus watched a group of young Centauri military cadets as their instructor explained the mathematics of his famous shot. The instructor, a grizzled veteran of the border wars, gestured toward the tunnel opening that led to the quantum generator chamber. The human calculated 17 different variables, the instructor was saying. Asteroid rotation, gravitational influences, target velocity, projectile decay rates, and factors we still don't fully understand. He had one shot, at one specific moment with no room for error, and he made it count. One of the cadets raised a tentacle in question. Sir, the records show the target was a hegemony bioship with adaptive armor. How did a kinetic weapon penetrate defenses that can stop energy blasts from dreadnought-class weapons? Because, the instructor replied, humans don't just solve problems. They solve problems that other species think are impossible to solve. That's why you're here studying their methods instead of the other way around. Marcus smiled slightly. The instructor was right, though perhaps not in the way he intended. Human success in the galaxy hadn't come from superior technology or overwhelming force. It had come from a willingness to attempt things that more cautious species would never consider. Where others saw impossibility, humans saw engineering challenges. His comm system chimed with a priority message from Earth Command. Marcus read it quickly, then activated the memorial's public address system. "Attention all visitors," he announced. "The UES Indomitable is approaching the memorial for a scheduled honor ceremony. All personnel should observe appropriate protocols for a flag officer's visit." The approaching ship was massive even by human standards, a kilometer-long dreadnought bristling with weapons that represented the best of human military engineering. But Marcus knew that Admiral Richardson wasn't coming here to display the fleet's power. She was coming to honor the dead, and to remind the galaxy that humanity's strength came not from its weapons, but from the people willing to use them when necessary. As the Indomitable took position near the asteroid, Marcus could see smaller ships in the distance, diplomatic vessels from the Arcturian Empire, the Vegan Confederacy, and even the previously hostile Carillion systems. They'd come to observe the ceremony, but Marcus suspected they were really here to study human military capabilities and try to understand how a species they'd dismissed as primitive had managed to change galactic politics with a single shot. Admiral Richardson's shuttle docked at the memorial's main port, and Marcus made his way to the central chamber to greet her. The Admiral was a compact woman with silver hair and the kind of steady gaze that came from decades of command experience. She moved through the memorial with the respect due to sacred ground, stopping to read memorial plaques and observe the eternal flame. "Tomb Guard Chen," she said when they met beside the flame, "I've read your after-action report 17 times and I still can't quite believe what you accomplished here." "I had good equipment and better training, Admiral," Marcus replied. "And I was defending something worth defending." "The quantum penetrator was experimental technology," the Admiral continued. "Our scientists are still trying to understand how it worked. The calculations required for your shot would challenge a ship's tactical computer, let alone a human brain working under combat stress." Marcus looked at the eternal flame, its impossible combustion a reminder that humans specialized in making the impossible routine. "Admiral, every person buried in this memorial faced impossible odds. They didn't have experimental weapons or tactical computers. They had determination and the refusal to accept defeat. Sometimes that's enough," the Admiral nodded slowly. "The Secretary General wanted me to offer you a promotion. Fleet Command. Your choice of assignments, full Admiral's rank if you want it. The entire galaxy knows your name now. You could write your own ticket to any position in human space." "Thank you, but no," Marcus replied immediately. "My place is here with the dead I've sworn to guard. Someone needs to make sure they're remembered, and that their sacrifice continues to mean something." Admiral Richardson smiled. "That's exactly what I told the Secretary General you'd say. The dead are lucky to have you watching over them, Marcus, and the living are lucky to have an example of what humans can accomplish when they refuse to accept the impossible." The ceremony that followed was broadcast throughout human space and monitored by intelligence services across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including several who had never before acknowledged human military achievements. They watched as Admiral Richardson laid a wreath at the memorial wall, as the honor guard fired a ceremonial salute, and as the eternal flame flared brighter in response to some quantum effect that human scientists still couldn't fully explain. But the most significant moment came when Marcus took his position at the memorial wall and spoke to the assembled crowd. 6 months ago, alien forces came here believing they could erase human history with superior technology and overwhelming force, he said. They learned that human history isn't written in stone or metal. It's written in the determination of people who refuse to surrender, who refuse to accept defeat, and who refuse to let the impossible remain impossible. Marcus paused, looking out at the crowd of humans and aliens, diplomats and soldiers, friends and former enemies. Every person buried in this memorial faced odds that should have destroyed them. They fought anyway. They died protecting a future they would never see, defending a species that some claimed had no place among the stars. Today, humanity stands as equals in the galactic community, not because we were granted that status, but because we earned it. And we will continue to earn it, one impossible shot at a time. The ceremony ended, the dignitaries departed, and the memorial returned to its eternal vigil. But Marcus Chen remained at his post, rifle ready, watching over the dead and reminding the galaxy that humans were still human, still willing to attempt the impossible, still dangerous when cornered, and still the species that had turned a tomb into a fortress and made the universe itself into their weapon. The eternal flame burned beside him, fed by quantum generators that converted matter into energy in ways that violated half the known laws of physics. It was a fitting tribute to the human spirit, impossible by every rational measure but burning nonetheless, a reminder that some flames could never be extinguished. In the vastness of space around the memorial, sensors registered the constant presence of ships from dozens of species, all maintaining respectful distances, and all carrying the message that would echo through galactic history. Humans don't just guard their dead.